back in the day in Bristol where I was brought up,
Yeah.
there was a little cafe called Rita's Cafe, bless it, in Lodge Causeway in Fishponds of all places. And I used to go in there, and one day this thing turned up called Missile Command. And what was interesting to me initially was the fact that the controls were something different. So whereas traditionally you'd have left, right and fire,
Yeah.
with this you had something new called a trackball, which operates very much in a similar way to a mouse. So you roll the ball and it has an effect on the screen. So it was one of the earliest analog controllers, if you like.
So could you just explain for us then how the actual game, the format of the game works then?
Yeah, it's slightly different in that you have 6 lives effectively, which are represented as cities, which sit along the bottom of the screen. The object of the game is to intercept the missiles as they come down from the top of the screen towards your cities, and you're firing missiles up.
Yeah.
And hopefully meeting them before they hit your cities. And when they blow your cities up, it's game over.
Now forgive me if I'm going a little bit too deep on it, but obviously with the game being coming out in the 1980s, there's a kind of a Cold War edge to it, isn't there? Where do you think that kind of comes from? What do you think? Do you think that adds something to the game?
Absolutely, yeah. And the guy who wrote the game, called Dave Thurer, has gone down as saying actually the thing that inspired him was the whole Cold War, Russia versus America thing. And initially they were going to call the game Armageddon, but after it went through playtesting out in the public, people were actually drawn away from the machine because it was called Armageddon, and they just didn't want to go near it. So they softened it down a bit and called it Missile Command, obviously, in the end.
So what do you think it is then about the kind of classic games from the extent that now you've got all these games, fantastic graphics, things like this, but it's also like the simplicity of these classic games. These are the ones people stick with forever, like
Yeah.
you have, and we've seen with other kind of classic gamers.
Yeah.
What do you think that is about them?
I think it's because you had to use your imagination. So everything's done for you on a 360 now. So if they produce something like Missile Command on a 360, it would be in 3D, it would have state-of-the-art CGI, which is great, and that's a different kind of gaming. But with the games of the early 80s, it was all about left, right, up, down and fire, and that was basically it, and the rest of it was in your head.
Well, talking about like imagination, one thing we don't have to use is when we look at it, imagine what it looked like when it was brand new. It's a fantastic machine you've got here. How did you go about getting this together? Was it in this state when you found it?
There's a guy called Archer McLean, which some of your viewers may be familiar with, and he wrote games like Archer McLean's Pool and Jimmy White's Snooker and all of those things. And he's probably the premier collector of arcade games in the UK. And I was introduced to him by someone else, and I went around his house and we got talking about old arcade games, and I mentioned to him this game called Missile Command that I used to play. And he took me down in his basement and showed me this. However, when we first saw it, it was in a really, really poor state. So he'd imported it from America, and there were concrete splashes up the top. The trackball didn't roll at all. The buttons were sealed down with rust. There were scratches all over the screen. The monitor didn't work. You couldn't get into the back because the key was rusted solid. It was a complete mess. And so we came to an arrangement whereby he offered to fully restore the thing in order for it to sit in my lounge. It was completely stripped down and sanded. Archer redesigned all of the side art. We got the boards reconditioned, it's got new buttons. He got this reprinted and re-overlaid, and there's a black vinyl. And he's even gone down to the detail of on the back of the machine where you've got the Atari stickers which tell you what the voltage are and where the game was made and the year. He's actually reproduced those and varnished them and stuck them back on. So from top to bottom, the whole thing's been completely restored.
So nothing done by half measures then?
No, absolutely not. I mean, Archer's view is it's actually probably a better quality of the machine than the ones which rolled out off the arcade production lines back in the 80s.
Well, and was it then obviously this better quality machine that you managed to break your world record on? Because from what you were saying there, did you take some sort of time out away from it? Then there must have been a big gap when you played it from when you were younger.
I didn't play Missile Command for 20 years until I came across this. And Archer had another one in his house, which I had a quick go on. So yeah, I've played in total for about 4 years of my life, but with a 20-year gap in the middle of that.
What was it like breaking the record? How did you feel? Did you know at a certain point you were going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd been playing for about 14 months fairly regularly, and I just couldn't quite get over 1.2 million, which was really annoying because I was kind of so close but so far. And then what happened early this year, around sort of February time, I found every time I played I was scoring well over 1 million, and that hadn't happened before. So I thought, well, there's kind of something happening here, so I need to capitalise on what's going on. So I kept playing, and it was, I think, the 9th of March at about 1 in the morning. I was sat here playing, and things are going well. And before I knew it, I'd beaten the record and just kept going.
Who was the first person you spoke to after you'd beaten the record?
First person I spoke to was my wife, who kind of said something like, oh, "That's really nice. Can we get rid of that great big lumping machine in the lounge now?" which is fine. Then I spoke to a friend of mine called Paul Drury, who writes for Retro Gamer magazine. He's been sort of following what I've been doing quite closely, so he was the second. So I've had a more enthusiastic response from Paul than
you got something a bit more like what you wanted.
Yes, I did. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you very much. You get it. Have you ever had any correspondence with anyone whose records you've broken, or anyone who fancies breaking your record, or have you been safe?
I have actually, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you know about that?
I didn't know. I was just looking in deep in the eyes and just guessing.
Okay, yeah. Well, the guy whose record I beat is a chap called Roy Schilt. Unfortunately for me, I seem to have picked the most obsessive American guy in the world, whose record I've actually beaten now after 25 years. And Roy's always made quite a big deal of the fact that he's been the undisputed champion for the last 24 years or so, and he has a persona of himself called Mr. Awesome. So when he plays in tournaments in the States, he turns up in full missile commander gear, which involves sort of tight pants, a sort of security guard type jacket, a proper peaked cap with missile commander on it. It's really very, 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 very bizarre. I haven't met him, thankfully. I've had some correspondence with him, and he's an interesting guy. He's someone you should interview.
Right, well, we maybe will do. We'll tell him that the red coats are coming. How about that?
Yeah.
We'll get him. Thank you very much for that, Tony. Appreciate it. Catch you soon there.